Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, President Biden was in Pennsylvania ahead of Thursday's primetime speech to the public on what he is calling the continued battle for the soul of the nation. Looks like we'll be carrying that speech live right here in this hour. The address will take place in front of Philadelphia's Independence National Historical Park, a district which contains the Liberty Bell as well as Independence Hall, where both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were signed. It's a fitting location for a speech which will focus on the future of American democracy and on the acute threats brought to it by Donald Trump and the movement he has spawned. But Biden's choice of venue actually serves a dual purpose. It's not just symbolism. Because Pennsylvania is a battleground state with two marquee statewide races in November's midterms. There's the Senate race between the state's Democratic Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and Republican TV Dr. Mehmet Oz, and the gubernatorial race between the state's Democratic Attorney General Josh Shapiro and a Republican state senator named Doug Mastriano. I do not think it is an exaggeration to say that Mastriano is one of the most extreme candidates ever nominated to statewide office by a major party, ever. He is an anti-abortion hardliner, supports a total abortion ban without any exceptions, even for survivors of rape and incest, and would be in position, should he win, to make that the law of the land in Pennsylvania. He said gay marriage should not be legal, that Islam is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution, that climate change is an academic hoax. He's also associated with Christian nationalism, a far-right movement that believes America is an explicitly Christian country. Earlier this year, he spoke at a Pennsylvania political conference with ties to the QAnon conspiracy theory. Mastriano has also been photographed, as you see there on the screen, this was just recently made public, wearing a Confederate soldier's uniform. Not a great look for any politician, especially one from the North, to proudly wear the uniform of a treasonous army that took up arms to defend the institution of slavery. Also a very, very weird thing to do. And it's not like Mastriano is just some real history buff either. Check this video out, okay? This resurfaced this week. This shows Doug Mastriano affirmatively walking over to a group of men, armed, waving the Confederate flag, apparently defending a statue of Confederate leader Robert E. Lee in Gettysburg from what they claim is the threat of left-wing agitators. Now, you might notice there, if you've been sort of following the fringes of American right-wing politics, a few of the men are even wearing shirts associated with the so-called Boogaloo movement, those sort of Hawaiian shirts, which is a far-right fringe group which calls for a second civil war.
We got to stop calling them liberals. Because a liberal is somebody who kind of like small government, you do your thing,
there was
I do mine.
A couple of protesters here earlier, but
Marxist, socialist, communist nowadays.
What are they going to do?
Yes.
And they have the Black Lives Matter.
Sick stuff. Thanks for being vigilant, gentlemen.
Hey,
God bless
you, sir.
Okay, the voice there of the man walking over to the armed group of people in front of the Robert E. Lee statue, right, with the Confederate flag, the voice saying, yes, yes, thank you for being vigilant, gentlemen. That's Doug Mastriano. All of that on its own would be disqualifying. Those are the kind of people that Doug Mastriano wants more of. He thinks they're doing the right thing, okay? But this is more than just theoretical abstraction. Mastriano was also one of the most fervent supporters of Donald Trump's attempted coup of any elected official in the nation. He spent months loudly pushing the big lie of a stolen election. He was even the Pennsylvania point person on Trump fake elector scheme, which is being criminally investigated in both Georgia and, we believe, by the Department of Justice. And that is the same scheme that Mastriano publicly touted many times.
Governor Wolf didn't look into any allegations and blew them off. Secretary of State Boockvar blew off all the allegations of shenanigans. Our Attorney General, declared a winner before one vote was counted. And so the whole process has been corrupted. Nobody cares to see if there was shenanigans, cheating, fraud, disenfranchisement. And so we're going to rise up and say, look, constitutionally, we have the final say on who the electors are. So we're going to reassert our authority here and try to do the right thing here and correct this entire disaster that's happened over this election cycle.
Of course, the claims about the election there are all complete and utter nonsense. The election was looked into. None of the claims stood up. It was all ridiculous. It was all lies. That interview of Mastriano was approvingly shared by Donald Trump on his official YouTube channel when he had one. Mastriano says he spoke with Trump at least 15 times between the election and the insurrection about plans to overturn Trump's loss. Of course, those plans ultimately failed. And when they did, Mastriano helped organize buses to take angry Trump supporters from Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Mastriano even marched to the Capitol himself with the armed insurrectionist mob that would go on to bash in the brains of cops. Doug Mastriano is a hardcore election denier. He stands opposed to democracy, which is, of course, the principle the people get to choose their leaders and don't have leaders shoved down their throats by force. He would govern along those lines. As governor, he would have the authority to appoint Pennsylvania's Secretary of the Commonwealth, who oversees elections. What do you think that person's going to be like if Doug Mastriano appoints them? Mastriano even explicitly says he will direct the appointee to reset the state's voter rolls, which is to say, wipe them utterly clean and require every single eligible Pennsylvanian to re-register to vote. And if there are any lingering doubts about Mastriano's intentions, listen to this conversation live streamed by a supporter during his victory party.
What do you want to tell us tonight? You're about to win victory.
We're going to send a message for the United States of America. Things are changing in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania changed. It's going to be fantastic.
20 electoral votes as well. All right.
Catch that, 20 electoral votes as well. Now, you could say, well, we're going to make sure Donald Trump or Republican wins, right? But given what Mastriano has on the record stating earlier this block when he says it's our right to appoint the electors, 20 electoral votes as well in that context sure sounds like if Mastriano controls the state, the results of the 2024 election are predetermined. It sure sounds, again, given what he has advocated for publicly, like he's saying Pennsylvania's electoral votes, of which there will be 19 in 2024, not 20, will just go to the Republican candidate, presumably Donald Trump, regardless of the actual outcome. I know that sounds batty, but that is what he was on the record advocating. Some people have been dismissing Mastriano as a fringe candidate. And at some level, that's understandable. He is not a person who should be within 1,000 miles of the seat of power. But he can win. I mean, people said the same thing about another right-wing extremist, Donald Trump, who also defended armed thugs trying to protect Confederate statues. Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016. He only lost it by 80,000 votes in 2020. The latest polling only has Mastriano down about 3 points against the Democratic nominee Josh Shapiro, which is in the margin of error. It is a toss-up race. Doug Mastriano can absolutely win in Pennsylvania. He can absolutely become governor and ban abortion there. He can absolutely become governor and cultivate support from the kind of armed thugs who stand outside the Robert E. Lee statue, which is what makes President Biden's speech there on Thursday all that more relevant. The president is going to lay out what is at stake, highlight how even with the many attempts to protect our democracy, our rights and freedoms are still at risk, not in some abstract way. Remember, we all watched the buildup to January 6th happen in real time. No, he wasn't really hiding it. He was out saying it's rigged, right? He didn't do it overnight. A month-long fight unfolded directly in public. The same thing is happening now for 2024 in front of all of our eyes, setting the groundwork in these state races. And the only question is, will enough voters rally to stop it?